Hello, everyone. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Live Show. Remember, 5 days a week, 11 a.m. Eastern. Hey, if you missed the live show, you can always get the replay. It's on RotoWire YouTube. And I'm excited to be with everybody. Hopefully, everybody's having a great week so far. Preseason action, get a full slate of games this weekend. Not what they once were. Before COVID, they meant a lot more. There was a lot more actionable advice I could take from preseason games. The starters play less and less and less, but there are some things we can learn. But anyway, very exciting. Now, with programming, I'm always off Thursdays and Fridays in the preseason, but this weekend we got the Kings Classic Saturday, got the Fantasy Football Expo Sunday, so I will not be back on until Monday, so I apologize for that, but that's a pretty big weekend, and hopefully some of you are going out to Canton, Ohio. If you are, make sure you come by and say hello. I'd love to talk with you and hang out a bit, and if you've been liking the show, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button if you're on RotoWire YouTube. It lets the bosses know that you value the show, helps me out a bit. And if you are prone to follow people on socials and you're not following me, please give me an opportunity at Jim Coventry NFL. During the preseason, I post 5 player threads a week. Did a good one on Cam Akers today, so please check that out. Hunter Renfro, Uncle Ted's in the house. All right, Uncle Ted. Always glad you're here, Uncle Ted. Appreciate you. Finally, stay tuned to the end of the show. Britt Flynn of Fantasy Alarms coming on to talk players that she's targeting in 2023 fantasy football drafts. Let's get to the news of the day of yesterday, of course, because it's early today. John Harbaugh, Baltimore Ravens news. He expects J.K. Dobbins to be at practice very soon, as per Jeff Zarebic of the Baltimore Sun. Now, here's the thing. Harbaugh basically makes this comment saying, well, the ball's in Dobbins' court. Well, he said that last week too, right? So basically, it is a contract hold-in. That's what it is right now. The team has him on the PUP list with an unspecified injury. Don't know if that's a wallet hurting in the back pocket. Maybe that's what it is. But anyway, Dobbins really has no leverage. 4th year's final year of his rookie deal, but he's missed significant time. He really does not have leverage. And if he doesn't show up, the penalties he would have to pay, assuming the team takes him off the PUP list and they start fining him, would be way more than his salary. And if he doesn't play, they could just toll his contract back to this year. So he has no leverage other than what he perceives it to be. So I don't know how this shakes out. I mean, but you never know what a human being's going to do, right? I have to think that his agent at some point has to say, dude, you got to play. Because he has to prove himself. If he wants a long-term contract, who is really giving J.K. Dobbins a long-term contract? He plays 8 games last year, coming off the ACL. He missed the whole prior season. So it's difficult, right? Now, when he's on the field, there's no question. He is a super running back, 6 yards per carry as a rookie. And last year, he said he was never 100%, still goes for 5.7 yards per carry. And so he was getting better, obviously, as the season went on, right? Down the stretch, after week 14, they have like 4 divisional games. The dude runs for almost 7.5 yards per carry. So he is in that system, especially because his broken tackle rate wasn't like through the charts. It was 58th percentile, which is very good, but it's not Superman. But in that offense, with his ability, great red zone ability to understand how to find those gaps when he gets down in the red zone. He just finds the end zone. Anyway, so drafting him is difficult because he, on Fantasy Mojo, the last 3 days, he's running back 24, pick 68. And if we know he's on the field and he's playing, he's a slam dunk there. Because even if he gets a limited workload as he has during his time in Baltimore, he finishes better than that if he plays. But the uncertainty, obviously, is what's driving his cost down. So here's what I'll tell you. If you take the plunge on J.K. Dobbins, go get Gus Edwards late. Gus Edwards is like forgotten in drafts. He's well outside the top 150 picks. If Dobbins doesn't show, remember, Edwards looked good last year coming off an ACL as well, but he had injuries as well. He missed the first 6 weeks. He missed a little time, after that. But I think he's fully healthy. He's 28. And if he has to take over for Dobbins, he will carry the mail for you. He won't be Dobbins, but certainly just back up Dobbins with Gus Edwards, who's free in drafts. I think that's a really good way to approach that. Jacksonville Jaguars news is next. In the camp, Tank Bigsby showing excellent speed, athleticism, mastering the playbook in a hurry. So 3rd round pick, right? Well, he plays at Auburn. Auburn, and I know differing levels of offensive line, that offensive line at Auburn was offensive. It was horrible. Bigsby still played well. I don't think we can look at his college situation and just directly transfer that to his NFL. Now, first of all, in terms of ADP, he's being picked slightly aggressively. Running back 43, pick 117, for a third round rookie. That's, he's definitely a backup to Travis Etienne. It's a little ambitious, but I don't know about it because I don't mind taking Tank Bigsby. We saw last year. So Etienne had a couple games week 8 and 9. He had about 24 or so carries. And then they backed off. And then there was a little stretch. I think it was like week 15 and 16. They gave him a little more work, and then they backed off again. So then they add Dearness Johnson and then Bigsby in the draft. To me, the organization says, look, we love Travis Etienne, but he's a player we want to manage his reps. They want to get a second running back heavily involved. And last year was JaMychal Hasty, and he was getting a fair amount of work. But Bigsby, my scouting report on him was he was an early down running back, not a slam dunk NFL starter. He has explosiveness. He has to add a little consistency. Now, his explosiveness testing wasn't good. He looked explosive in college, but he actually tested at the 42nd percentile. And his speed was at the 43rd, but he's 210 pounds. So you give him a little bit of a pass on that because he's not a small back. But he changes directions very well. And out of his breaks, he shows explosiveness. And one thing I like about Bigsby, when he's setting up a run, he has vision at a second level and he sees the defenders and he can change his speeds to kind of navigate the defenders. It's a very good skill that not a lot of running backs have. Now, things that worked against him. Week to week, he wasn't the same player because he had inconsistencies in his game. And he has that upright running style where you take on a lot of contact. But if he doesn't get a ton of carries, that might not be a problem. Volume runners that run upright have a problem. And also, a lot of college backs do this, and they can get a coach out of them. But Bigsby bounced a lot of runs to the outside. You could get away with that in college. In the NFL, unless you have elite speed to the edge, which Bigsby does not, that doesn't work. But that's once correctable. A lot of running backs, they do it in college because they can, and then they learn. And as a receiver, he didn't show good hands, but Etienne wasn't used enough as a receiver. 3 catches were the most he had in any game. But I do expect Etienne to get at least a slightly enhanced role there. Now, Doug Peterson's offense, they haven't been very heavy passing to the running backs over the years. So, but that's back to Etienne. I do think instead of 3 catches in a number of games, I think we see some 4s and 5s in there, but it's not going to be break the bank. He's not going to be getting these 7-catch games. I just don't think Doug Peterson, despite the weapon Etienne is in the passing game, I just don't see him completely changing, especially having a franchise quarterback, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. It's not like he has to design the game to go through the running back, but Etienne will be fine. And Bigsby, again, at his ADP, I do think he's going to get enough carries to give you at least flex value. And it's certainly, and we hope Etienne stays healthy, but if he misses time, the offensive line in Jacksonville is not good, but when you have a quarterback in a passing game, they'll be able to dictate defenses and light box counts. I think they can overcome that a bit. Hey, let's compete for $250,000, and you get a shot at a free RotoWire subscription. You can play in the NFFC Beat Jim Coventry 3 RotoWire Online Challenge. Now, that draft is coming up Tuesday. It'll be August 15th, so it's less than a week away, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm live streaming that draft on the channel you're watching right now. I will highlight every person in that draft. I will talk about your draft, your team. Great chance to get instant feedback. Make sure I feature everybody, like I said. And if you want to sign up for that league, go to my Twitter profile. It's pinned to the profile. It's at Jim Coventry NFL. All right, let's move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers news. And I don't think I mentioned this yesterday. So Kyle Trask, his per Jenna Lane of ESPN, is showing improvement during camp. He's closing the gap on Baker Mayfield for the Buccaneers starting quarterback job. Now, they want a competition. They want to push both and see what they have. I still think right now the offensive line is below average. They have Mike Evans. They have Chris Godwin. I still think ultimately Mayfield is better equipped for the job. Now, neither quarterback's going to have big numbers, all right? But they do have 2 great receivers. And so if you're in a super flex or 2 quarterback league, Mayfield's going like quarterback 30. I think the talk of Trask competing for the job, that makes sure that it is an end game third quarterback. You could grab Mayfield. I do think he wins that job. And like I said, you're not looking for big numbers. You're just looking for somebody on those bye weeks or desperation injury. Because remember, there's 32 quarterbacks. And if you're in a 2-quarterback league, well, do the math. 12 teams, 2 quarterbacks is 24. There's only 8 left over. And some of those are really bad choices like Mayfield. But 4 teams don't even get their crack at a quarterback. So again, those quarterback leagues, they're desperation moves. Take them. So next thing we're going to talk about is Saints receiver, New Orleans Saints, Rashid Shaheed. He has a groin injury right now. Now, it is enough where he's expected to miss the preseason, but the team does not have concerns that he'll miss week 1. Now, Shaheed is going outside the top 130 picks, but he's in line to be their third receiver. Right now, Michael Thomas is healthy. We'll see how long that lasts. And obviously, Chris Olave is the stud, right? And so now we have Shaheed as the number 3. Now, Shaheed really impressed me last year. He didn't join the roster. He signed in October. He comes on, and he has really good speed. So he's winning downfield, right? He gets a good number of downfield passes. They had a late bye, the Saints did. And after that bye, defenses were already starting to make adjustments on Shaheed. They started using Shaheed as a short and intermediate receiver, and he was successful. Now, that versatility, that teaches me a lot. He can be a factor in this offense. Now, here's the problem. Unless whatever Michael Thomas misses time, they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. Derek Carr needs protection, and running 2 tight end sets with Foster Moreau and Juwan Johnson, and then passing off play action out of those looks is the best way to get production from Derek Carr. Last year, he was hung out to dry. A lot of three receiver sets, 11 personnel, extra defensive back on the field, teams running simulated pressures against them. It was a nightmare for Derek Carr. But so if you're betting on Shaheed, you're betting on Michael Thomas not making it through many games. He's only played 10 games in the last 3 years, and it's been a foot issue, and he's 30 now. And so it's a fair bet to make. But until he misses time, Shaheed's going to be maybe not seeing enough snaps to help you in fantasy. But as a flex, he might be okay there. And I don't know how much they're going to want to pass. They're going to run a slow-paced offense in New Orleans, and they do want to run the football. And Kamara's going to miss 3 games, but I think they can get by early. Let's see, we got a couple points here. Uncle Ted, see what you got here. Any timelines? So you know what? Judy, it was a favorable schedule, but he blew up down the stretch. And Sutton primarily was a good skill match with the downfield acumen to go with Russell Wilson. But the thing is, Russell Wilson, now the team's like figured out, you put safeties over the top on him, and he just can't really win consistently deep anymore. And Sutton, he's pretty far removed from a good season. And I love Courtland Sutton. I was super high on him. But between the quarterback, the production, it hasn't really been there. I think Sean Payton is going to want to define reads for Wilson. And it's going to be hard for Wilson to acclimate because this is not Wilson's game. Wilson likes to freelance, buy time, bomb it downfield. But I think Payton is going to make it very tough for Wilson to live that way. So I think the structured routes underneath, that's Jerry Jeudy's world. And Wilson has not been a great intermediate passer, but at least they show chemistry down the stretch. So I don't think Sutton overtakes Jeudy anymore. Last year I had Sutton well ahead of Jeudy, but I just don't think under the current constraints of their offense. And remember, the offensive linemen they brought in, especially Mike McGlinchey, are good run blockers, not great pass blockers. So I think they also want to run the ball quite a bit to protect Wilson. So I think it's more of a possession passing game, and that favors Jeudy. And we've got a great point here. Chauncey TV, Raiders players that are now at the Saints. Foster Moreau, I expect him to be a blocking tight end. I expect Juwan Johnson, the converted wide receiver, to be the receiving threat because he is a very good seam stretcher for them. Now, Moreau will get a few targets for sure, but that's the main one I want to look at here, that Foster Moreau, because people do definitely raise an eyebrow when they see that. All right, fantasymojo.com for Rashid Shaheed again. Pick 181. So when I said outside of the top 130 picks, it was way out. He's wide receiver 74. So again, he is an end game pick, Rashid Shaheed, but definitely a player to target. All right, now late round wide receivers to target. Look, these are late round guys for a reason. There's a ton of questions around them. I try to build a case where these are players you could consider later in your fantasy football drafts. So the first one is Darnell Mooney of the Bears. Now, last 3 days, fantasymojo.com ADP, wide receiver 60. So he's at the very end of the wide receiver fives, and he's picked 149. So again, very, very late pick. Now, Mooney had an ankle injury that cost him the last 5 games last year. He hadn't missed a game in the 2 prior years. So basically the ankle injury it's one of those things, right? But he has not been an injury prone player. I do like the fact 2 years ago when Fields started 12 games, I believe, Mooney ends up over 1,000 yards, right? And last year, the Bears came into the season with a very ridiculous idea to like not want to pass the ball. It was an archaic offense for like 5 weeks or so. And they just had no acumen to pass the ball. Well, Mooney's last 8 games for the ankle injury, he was on a 990-yard pace. And that's still with the offense not being a great passing attack, but they were making at least it a little bit of a priority. So remember, he's got 4.38 wheels. So he's super fast. Now, here's what I like about Darnell Mooney. So you have DJ Moore on the other side. DJ Moore is a clear alpha receiver. Literally, if he's in a good offense with a good quarterback, I do believe he's a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. He's a running back with the ball in his hands. He can win at every level of the field. So Mooney has the wheels. Now, he was the number 1 there, and he was still like putting up 1,000-yard pace. Remember last year, that last 8 games, it was literally 1,000-yard pace. And 2 years ago, he hit 1,000 yards. So it's not like Mooney hasn't done it or can't do it. But now cast as a number 2. And I expect the Bears, they have to turn Justin Fields loose because this is the break point. They have to decide if he's their future or if they're going in a different direction. They have no choice but to let him throw the football this year. And the offensive line, I'm optimistic for the line. Their run blocking was great. The pass blocking, not good at all. But Braxton Jones, he was, I believe, a 5th-round pick last year, left tackle, played well. Right tackle, they used the 10th pick of this year's draft, Darnell Wright. Tevin Jenkins, we thought he was at first a bust, but he moves to guard. Very good at guard. They bring in Nate Davis. Now, Nate Davis had a breakout season with the Titans last year. And at center, I don't think it's Cody. I think it's Lucas Patrick and Cody Whitehair are battling there. But they're going to be okay. They'll be okay there. And they have depth. Like Larry Borum may not be very good, but he has reps. So they actually have some depth. I think they can protect enough. So now, if you're going to turn the passing game loose, and Chase Claypool will be a part of this because they're going to need a big body at some point. But Mooney's proven he's a producer. And I do believe the Bears will pass much more than they did last year. So Mooney is a wide receiver 60, pick 149. Yes, sign me up for that because I do believe at that ADP, he could easily. What do you need to break ADP there? You need 750 yards? It should be a lock for Mooney. All right. Next player, let's see. Oh, by the way, if you're liking the show, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button if you're on RotoWire YouTube. And also, if you can give me a follow on socials at Jim Coventry NFL. I keep putting those 5 days a week. Player threads up. Today, it was Cam Akers. I like the thread on Akers. I think you'll like it too. Check that out for sure. And if you're at the Fantasy Expo this weekend, Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, head out there. I'll be there. Come and meet me. I'd like to talk to you, say hi. It'd be a great time. Kings Classic, I'm drafting there on Saturday. And also, if you want RotoWire free access, no credit card, till the end of August, go to rotowire.com/expo and we'll set you up till the end of the month with free RotoWire access for being part of the Fantasy Football Expo. All right, next player who we are looking at late in drafts. I'll put the caveat. He will get hurt at some point. He will miss some time at some point. But DJ Chark of the Panthers. He's going fantasymojo.com ADP last 3 days, wide receiver 66, pick 170. Now, he hasn't played a full season in 5 years, so he is going to miss time. You are drafting him as a wide receiver 6. When he's on the field, you can use him. When he's hurt, if you have an IR spot, you can move him there. understand what his deal is and what the ADP is, and it's fine. Now, his games missed. He has a 6 last year. He had 13 2 years ago. That was terrible. A 3, a 1, and a 5. So he's, other than the 13 games he missed in 2021, he's on the field more than he's not. So reasonable there. Now, other than the 7 catches he had in 2021, last year his 16.7 yards per reception was a career high. And it was nice with Jared Goff that he did that. That was very impressive. Now, last year, in 3 of his first 4 games, he showed us that he has it. He went between 94 and $1.08 on the yardage and 2 touchdowns. And in his last 7 games, he only had 2 like really duds. So he was mostly fine. And I do believe he has to come out as the number 1 in that offense. Adam Thielen can't separate anymore. Chark will be on the outside. Bryce Young's a short dude. I don't know that as a lot of young quarterbacks, I don't think he can live in the middle of the field. I think sight lines are going to be an issue. I think he's going to roll out. I think he's going to throw to the perimeter where he has better sight lines. And I think DJ Chark has the physical ability to win at the catch point. And so I do think that's a great opportunity for him. And, he can win downfield. He can win in the intermediate area. He can run after the catch on slants. So I do think it's a great opportunity for him. But again, you are drafting him in the end game of your draft. Wide receiver 6. Just know what you're getting there. Uncle Ted's talking about Chosen Anderson. I think there's been 3 name changes in the last year. That's something. So I think ultimately he had a nice little run with Sam Darnold, and that's probably 5 years ago. I don't think he's been the same guy since. He's a string bean. He's fairly fast. I think his play speed is better than his time speed. It was. But I think that speed isn't what it was before. I think he lost a step because, man, he's had opportunities going to teams, and he's just been buried. And, Arizona needed help, and they could barely get him on the field. So maybe, but I don't know that Chosen Anderson, in my opinion. But if you believe in him, draft him. And Uncle Ted, you talk about Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet, I'll quickly talk about him. Cole Kmet's a great option as outside the top 12 tight ends. He has a chemistry with Justin Fields, more than Albert. So he has a chemistry. And with the Bears having Mooney speed, and like we said before, we have DJ Moore. The middle of the field is going to be open more because that speed is going to stress defenses. And with the chemistry Fields already has with Kmet, there's going to be openings there. And I do think he's going to be very, very productive. And remember, when Chase Claypool's on the field, Kmet's their only big target. And, DJ Moore, he's not tiny, but he's not this mammoth figure. I think he's 6'210". That's about right. And, of course, Mooney's small. So, yeah, Kmet is somebody that you definitely can take in your draft outside the top 12 tight ends who could be a very good surprising pick. And let's see. Rondale Moore's going late. The problem is I love him. I just wish he could stay on the field. The injury bug has just been really problematic for him. And I wish I could say that was turning around. And any year a player can stay healthy. This goes back to his college days. He was missing time in college, and it just hasn't changed at the NFL level. Now, the good news for Rondale Moore is Cliff Kingsbury's gone. Cliff Kingsbury ran a ridiculous short, amount of yardage per route. Now, I know he's a slot guy, but you still got to use his speed and weaponize it a bit. Now, with no Kyler Murray potentially early in the season, it might not bode well for him. As a talent, I love Rondale Moore, but between the reliability of him being on the field and not knowing we're getting quarterback-wise, it's the only reason I have pause. But, man, I invested him in the past, and when he's on the field, he plays really well. Michael Gallup, we thought I know he's a year removed from the ACL. I just think that since he had the big year 3 years ago, I believe, even before the ACL, he wasn't the same player. I really feel like he's on this down slope. And the thing with Dallas is they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. They want the versatility. They want to be able to get heavier box counts and throw off of play action and utilize the speed of Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb. So I think, unfortunately, they're probably going to run upwards of 55, 60% 2 tight end sets, which means it's going to be Cooks and it's going to be CeeDee Lamb on the field. And I think the old Dallas days, when it was heavy 11 personnel, Gallup was on the field almost all the time. I don't think this iteration of the Dallas team is going to be that. They're going to win with defense. They're going to give Dak extra protection. They're coming off that, inefficient interception season. So maybe Gallup has a physical bounce back, but I think his snaps are going to be limited. There's like little chance he moves past Cooks, and we know he can't compete with CeeDee Lamb. They're different positions anyway. Lamb's all over the place. And last player I want to highlight here, and Britt, I'm going to bring you in now before it's time to come on while I talk about Khalil Shakir, and then we'll talk about your players, and I'll introduce you properly in a few minutes because people are waiting at the bottom of the hour for you to come in. Welcome aboard, Britt.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's, we've been seeing a lot of each other. We saw you on my show on Monday. I'm here. We're going to see each other at the expo this weekend. I mean, we're just becoming like regular buds.
That's a great thing, man. Good fantasy football people. You cannot get enough of good fantasy football people like Britt Flynn. And, I've loved the Fantasy Alarm family for years. I mean, back, a while back with Howard and Fensty, and there's like numerous others. And then you're in the fold, and we got Coop and Tompkins. It's just a wonderful group. And I do think a lot of my friends from the Fantasy Alarm. I'll introduce you now. Obviously, Fantasy Alarm. See you on the Better Sports Network all the time. I was on the show with you there. And you follow her on socials at Britt_Flynn. Britt, tell everybody how you're doing today.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm a little tired. There was a Lana Del Rey concert last night that just happened. It got announced like 2 weeks ago, so there was zero planning. And then a humongous thunderstorm came through at about 4 a.m. So my big, like 70-pound lab mix crawled into bed with me and wanted to snuggle because the thunder was scary. But I'm going to try my best to have some coherent thoughts and piece together some good fantasy advice for all you guys out there.
Hey, in this industry, Britt, we all can do this, man. We all do this. Sometimes we're on fumes, and yet we figure out a way to power. Thank you for being here. I know it's a tough night for you, so thank you for coming. I'm going to finish my talk about Khalil Shakir, then we're going to talk about your 4 players. So I'm talking about late round players that people could consider. Now, Khalil Shakir goes in less than half of deep drafts. When he does get picked, he's wide receiver 88 and pick 238. So if you're in a regular 12-team leagues, with just 16 picks, you're not taking Khalil Shakir. That's a guy who's going to be on waivers early in the season. But if you're in these 20-plus round leagues, at this point, now you're beginning to look at players like this. So last year, he didn't play a whole lot. He only has 10 catches on the season, targeted 20 times. But 4 of his 10 catches go for at least 20 yards. And again, super, super small sample size, but he was 96 percentile yards after the catch. And he actually did very well in the NFL playoffs. The wild card game, 5 targets, catches 3 for 51. And then in the AFC divisional game, both of his targets for 40 yards. Limited work, that's really impressive. Now, the team brings in Dalton Kincaid, and the big talk is Kincaid's going to be the slot. All right, maybe he will. But tight ends automatically becoming a thing on day one. There's a long track record of that not necessarily happening. And I'm not necessarily convinced. They like Shakir. They liked him last year. And when he's on the field, he showed great agility. So again, a flyer late in the draft. You will know by week 2 if he's part of their plans. And where you're drafting him, I always say this, draft the guy who you know about in week 2, because then you can just cut him if he's no good. Then you pick up something off the waiver wire. You don't want that player you're going to hold for 8 weeks and just say, maybe, maybe, maybe. It's clear cut on Shakir. Any words on Shakir? Not that you probably need to, but if you want to, I mean, he's buried in drafts. But anything on him?
Yeah, no, I actually liked him coming into the season last year, and I think that he served me well in a couple of DFS lineups in the season. The thing about Buffalo, it is such an anomaly because we do think that Kincaid is going to line up in the slot. But if you look at their usage of 12 personnel, they haven't used 12 personnel. So are they going to do it or are they not going to do it? And that is where the real linchpin is. So are they going to have Shakir in there or are they going to have Dalton Kincaid in there? And that's something that I'm very interested in seeing. That's going to be the real indicator of whether or not it's going to be Kincaid or Shakir.
And the funny thing, Britt, is if they do come out running 2 tight end sets, the 12 personnel that you talked about, I doubt defenses are going to put an extra body in the box. They're going to just, all right, fine, whatever. We're still playing with extra secondary people. And at some point, they're going to play a game of chicken with the Bills, and they're going to be like,
Yeah.
crap, they called our bullshit. And now we're going to have to just, throw like we did. It's going to be fun. But like you said, I'm very anxious like you to see how this shakes out. Britt, you're on to talk about 4 players who you're targeting in drafts this year. And man, I hope you're right on this one because I love this guy. In his second year in the league, which was 2 years ago, Justin Herbert accounts for 41 touchdowns. 3 of them were on the ground, and he throws for over 5,000 yards. Is the magic coming back this year?
I think it is. People were so quick to dismiss Justin Herbert last year, and they forget, like, he was playing with bruised ribs for a majority of the season. It wasn't just bruised ribs, it was cartilage. And as somebody who very stupidly, admittedly, jumped off a cliff and bruised all of her rib cartilage when I was in my younger years, I could not breathe. I could not move. I couldn't roll over in bed. Thinking about how hard it was for that guy to roll out of the pocket, to make those passes downfield, to make those reads, to continuously get hit over and over again. And he still had a decent season. Like, we're crapping on him. He still had 4,700 yards. Like, it's insane. Now that this guy is actually coming back, now that they got Quentin Johnston in the mix, I think that he's going to have a humongous year. I think he might actually be in the mix for QB1. I don't want to throw that out there too quickly. But yardage wise, I think he's got it.
Yeah, I mean, how do you argue with it, right? I mean, we have seen it. He's already done it. This is not like a stretch saying, well, he can't. And last year, the offensive line was really banged up. Rashawn Slater missed almost the whole season. Week 3, I believe. He was like down. And he is an elite, protector. And then Solier, I can't think of his first name, but he played tackle. He's best suited as a guard. They really are going to have some interior bulk. And Trey Pipkins was playing on a sprained knee much of the season, and he's not a world beater at tackle, but he's competent. So we could also see Herbert get some protection. So I am with you. And right now he's going as the QB6 per Fantasy Mojo ADP the last 3 days. And at the QB6, he's in that bucket of second-tier quarterbacks. Yeah, give me shares of Justin Herbert. I think you're onto something here, Brett. Anything you missed about Herbert?
I completely forgot that Kellen Moore is now the offensive coordinator who's going to come in there. I think that it's my cowboy bias, and I'm just like, I have Kellen Moore blinders on. But yeah, this guy likes to throw the ball. He likes to take risks. And when you've got a guy like Justin Herbert, who's already consistently thrown, I mean, even as a rookie, even playing, 15 games in his rookie season, threw for 4,300 yards. Now that you've got a good offensive coordinator, you've got a supporting cast. And that's another thing that I forgot. I'm sorry if I'm rambling because the ADD is just pinging. But, you had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams hurt as well last season. And you had guys like Jalen Guyton and like DeAndre Carter. Now that he's
Michael
got
Bandy.
Michael Bandy.
He was playing legitimate snaps, Brett.
Yes. No, it was insane how depleted that wide receiving core was. And now that you've got these guys both back, you've got Quentin Johnston, Austin Eckler, presumably, even despite the contract issue, is still going to be a humongous part of that offense and like the checkdowns. Justin Herbert to the moon, baby.
Yeah, and you make the case where you said he could be the quarterback one. And yes, I don't disagree with that for a minute, because the season he had 2 years ago, the offense is significantly in better position than it was 2 years ago. And, we don't just extrapolate numbers out, but he's done it and he can up that. And if you're looking 5,000 yards and you're looking 45 touchdowns, yeah, you're right in that discussion, the top of the rock, right? Britt, your next player at running back. So FantasyMojo.com does a rolling 3-day ADP. Yesterday, Gibbs was coming out as a running back 10. Now a little bit down at running back 11, but pick 33. So he's going in the end of the third round in high stakes 12-team leagues. Tell us why you like Jahmyr Gibbs is a great pick in that stage of the draft.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because we're doing these fantasy player debates at fantasyalarm.com. And I wrote this article on Sunday. He was going as RB14. Between Sunday and now, he's been juiced up like 3 or 4 more spots. It's actually crazy.
It was you. You moved the needle. Britt Flynn, influencer, moving the needle. Love it. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I think, people are really concerned about his ADP because A, he's a rookie. B, he's sharing the backfield with David Montgomery. But the thing with Gibbs is that he is explosive. I cannot underline that enough. He led the NCAA in explosive plays last season with Alabama. He also has a very good special teams presence. He averaged almost 20 yards a play on special teams. And this guy is a pure receiver. Now, we hear a lot of the time that these running backs are lining up in the slot. They're going to do this, they're going to do that. And then when the actual season starts, we never see it. Nope. But we're getting some confirmation bias because he's been working with the receivers. He hasn't been working with the running backs on pass blocking and all that stuff. He's been working with the receivers to run routes. And then just out of pure necessity, they don't have any other receivers outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown and a rookie tight end and Sam Laporta. They're going to have to use him. They are going to have to. And I'm not one to completely buy into training camp hype, but dude, this guy is so good. I've not seen a single bad play from him. The one that came out yesterday, he was torching everyone and just jumped up and grabbed that ball. I have very high hopes for Jahmyr Gibbs.
Britt, and as we look at how the NFL evolves year over year, what we see is the heaviness of zone defenses to limit explosive plays. And remember, for years, we were very rarely seeing running backs drafted in the first round. Bijan Robinson goes at 8, Gibbs goes at 12. What do they both have in common? They both, like you said, have the ability to move as legitimate receivers. When you're playing zones, you're looking to beat vacated spots in the zones. And it is a very dynamic set of weapons that you can put on your roster, like a Gibbs or a Bijan, that can expose zone defenses. So I think we were thinking, first round running back, it doesn't happen. But the league is constantly evolving. And I think, again, you're onto something here because they need, in their coaching staff, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, he was really good about getting Jared Goff into a comfortable first and second read, because Jared Goff had struggled with second reads after he kind of got figured out in LA. But Ben Johnson fixed that. And having Jahmyr Gibbs often as a second read, occasionally as a first, it's going to be dynamic. Did you miss anything on Gibbs?
I don't think so.
Perfect.
If I didn't say that I love him, I love him.
Good. Say it again. That's yes. We can do that all day long. So next is a wide receiver, and I am really excited about this year's Jacksonville Jaguars offense. Now, the offensive line is a little bit nerve-wracking. I know their left tackle's got a 6-game suspension to deal with. They got Walker Little kind of moving in there. It's going to be a little bit worrisome, but they've got a franchise quarterback, and they really did a lot of good things with not a great line last year. Tell us why Calvin Ridley, who right now is wide receiver 15, pick 30 per fantasymojo.com ADP. Tell us why he's a great pick, Britt.
Yeah, I think that people are reading in too much of the fact that he's been out of the league, but he wasn't out of the league because of injury like Odell Beckham or somebody like that. He was out of the league because he had a couple of issues that he had to work through. Looking at him and looking how fit he is, he has no rust whatsoever. And then you look at what he did when he was thrust into that wide receiver 1 role in Atlanta. Wide receiver 5 upside completely. And he was playing with like the ghost of pre-washed Matt Ryan. And now he has Trevor Lawrence. And you kind of saw what they did last season with Marvin Jones and Zay Jones on the outside. I mean, Calvin Ridley is hands and feet better on the outside than these guys are. And they still produce. I don't think that there's any way that Calvin Ridley disappoints at ADP. I think that you might be drafting him at his floor. And people are still just so hesitant to draft him with their schedule, with Trevor Lawrence in his 3rd year, with Doug Peterson, with a decently stronger running game, because you've got Tank Bigsby in there now. I mean, you're going to have to spread this defense out. Nobody is going to be able to cover him. You've got Christian Kirk back in his natural position in the slot. All things are aligning for Calvin Ridley to have a monster year.
Britt, what also helps him is the middle of the field presence the Jaguars have with Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. A lot of times teams will go in, they flip between man and zone. And sometimes you might there's Ridley there, so maybe we're going to do something with a bracket on him on one side. But when the middle of the field presence is so strong, it's going to be too vulnerable. Defenses, I don't think are going to be able to consistently sell out to get Ridley. And I love your point about Zay Jones. And I had Zay Jones 80% exposure last year. Last round of every draft, Zay Jones. And you know what? The season he got was about right. It was, I don't remember the yards, it was probably around 800, a decent number of touchdowns. But like you said, if the outside receiver, the top one who wasn't a great player, could put those numbers up, Calvin Ridley, seriously, 1,100 yards has to be the floor. And you do have ceiling beyond that. So again, another fantastic call. And I think at ADP, he could definitely be that guy. You can get your running backs early and then come in with a Ridley after that. Anything you missed on Ridley?
I don't think so. I'm still
Perfect.
waiting on, oh, man, my brain is just like all the things. But no, I think I covered it.
No, I thought you did too, but I always try to, just in case somebody's, I know with me, sometimes like, oh, wait, I missed something. And I always try to do the same thing for others. The last one, I'm very interested to hear this because the tight end field is always a miss. It's a minefield. You get those top few and it's great. And then we got to deal with all these after tight end 8. And every year it's like, oh, this one, that one, we get high on names. So I liked some of the things we saw early from Greg Dulcich, but then the offense was a mess. We had Russ, we had Nathaniel Hackett for a while, but now at least Sean Payton's in. There should be some stability to the offense. Tell us why you like Greg Dulcich, who's currently going as the tight end 14.
Yeah, I was high on him coming out of UCLA. Probably some of my bias is because I was doing Pac-12 projections, and I just really liked how he profiled as a receiver. Now, going to Denver, his ADOT, I know that he wasn't present because he was dealing with an injury, but when he did get on the field, his ADOT ranked 3rd out of all tight ends. His yards after catch was, just pretty good. His deep targets, he ranked 3rd among tight ends. His target share, everything that you want to see out of this guy. And then if you look at separation too, his separation was 2.36 yards. Now that you've got Sean Payton in there, and I'm not going to overstate the Joker role that he loves to play, but let's face it, this is what Sean Payton loves to do. I think with that combination of size, speed, and route running ability, that Greg Dulcich is going to be a huge part of this offense. Now, I will caveat this with saying that with tight ends, you want them to be top 2 on the team in targets. So I'm taking that little bump. I think that Dulcich actually out-targets Cortland Sutton. Howard Bender does not agree with me, but I am planting my flag, and that's what I think happens this season.
Hey, love Howard, but he doesn't agree with a lot of things. Love Howard Bender. He's the man. But, when we're talking about Dulcich, so you were probably 3 years old when Marcus Colston was a rookie. I joke. But anyway, I don't remember even what year that was. Marcus Colston was a college tight end. Yahoo had him listed as a tight end, but he came out and Sean Payton made him a wide receiver. And he was over 1,000 yards as a rookie. And the one thing, so Payton knows how to take that bigger bodied tight end type if he's a receiver, and he could actually hybrid him if he needs to do that. But the other thing with Payton is when he gets a player that could create a mismatch, he will pound the mismatch over and over and over. And you talked about the separation that Dulcich has been able to create. And as long as you can realize that within this offensive scheme, Payton will definitely leverage that. So I think, again, we have that crazy zone outside the top 5 or 6 tight ends. We don't know where we're getting. I think Greg Dulcich is a cheap way to go to take a shot at somebody that could pop and be that top 6 or 7 tight end that you're hoping to hit on. Anything you missed on Dulcich?
Oh, just his hair. His hair is wonderful.
I clearly didn't get that gene. No doubt about it. Britt, tell everybody everything you have going on, where you're at, where they can find you so that everybody can keep up and follow your work.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You can follow me on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, at Britt_Flynn, FLINN. I'm on the Better Sports Network, A Better Morning, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern. Britt's Fantasy Blitz on A Better Sports Network, 2 p.m. Eastern on Mondays and Fridays. Lightning Round Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then Alarm Fantasy Football Tuesdays through Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern.
My goodness, I thought I was busy. And I don't hear you laying it out. I go, man, I need to work a little bit more. I think you got me. You know what, Britt? You and many others have made some great friends in this industry. I'm glad we've become friends. It's been great having you on this show, working with you on yours. So again, appreciate the friendship, the fantasy intel. Thank you for hanging with me. Thanks to everyone out there for joining us today. Now, remember, we will be dark all weekend because off Thursdays, Fridays, but we got Kings Classic Saturday, Fantasy Football Expo Sunday. If you're coming out there, we'll both be there. Say hello to us. But I'll be back on Monday to recap the Kings Classic draft and talk with Pat Fitzmaurice. I hope it's Fitzmaurice. I will always screw that up. Anybody, have a great day. Thanks for joining us.